Meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. First order of business is public comment. Anybody want to speak? Chris?
Yes, Chris Blaine. First thing I'd like to know is what the status is of the stone wall that was constructed on town land down at the mansion property.
Yep. Mary Ann?
Yeah, it's no different than what we told before. We're waiting for a second survey bid before we move forward with the survey.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I'd like to mention is that now that it's a little bit before summer, I'm hoping that we won't have to see Weldon's Way turned into a test track. It was nice to drive down it today and see nothing on either side of it. And as far as the Harborside property goes, I think that you could have a test track inside where that foundation was, instead of those lovely historic tents that are on the property now in the historic district.
Yeah, I don't know whether this was posted on the town's website, but the town did issue a notice of violation there, so it's in process.
All right, and the third thing is I read with interest the article in the Black Island Times regarding the medical center and the fact that people go up there and they have an accident on a bicycle or a moped and they just decide not to pay. So I think that it would be a good idea for the town to require insurance coverage on any bicycle that's rented or any moped that's rented, sufficient to cover any treatment required at the medical center so that the rest of the taxpayers don't get stuck footing the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else tonight? All right, we have. No, if you're here for an agenda item, that's gonna be heard, so. So we have consent calendar coming up. There's a matter on here. It is item 2D, approve recommendations for the Motor Vehicles for Hire Commission, which we're gonna pull off because we have two members who have to recuse on that. So can I have a motion for the consent agenda items A, B, C, and E?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Now, Molly, we're going to call what had been item D, approve recommendations from the Motor Vehicles for Hire Commission. Do you want to recuse?
I'll abstain from this.
You're recused.
I'll stay here, but.
You're better off leaving. If you're recusing, you should just step out.
Well, we have two items, don't we? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did this. Yeah.
Deja vu.
So it's just the three of us. Can we get along?
What can we do?
Can I have a motion to approve the recommendations of the Motor Vehicles for Hire Commission? One is the renewal of motor vehicles for hire licenses, and two is approval of the taxi, bus, and limousine wait list. Have a motion?
Oh, so moved.
And a second? Second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Molly, Tristan. This is our new PA system. Next, I would make a motion on item number 3 to reopen. Is that right? Yeah. Reopen public hearing that was continued from March 20th, 2024 regarding the short-term rental ordinance. Can I have a second? All those in favor of reopening the public hearing? Sure.
I don't think we vote, Molly pointed this out, that we didn't both have a vote on the actual consent agenda.
We did. We voted on the consent agenda, and then we voted on motor vehicles for hire.
Do you mind?
I think.
Letting me know who voted?
Didn't we? Or did we not?
That's what I said.
Did I forget it? All All right, well,
Let's re-vote it.
let's re-vote it just to be sure. Can I have a motion on the consent agenda, absent item D? Second,
Second.
get those? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, back to reconvening public hearing that had been continued from March 20th, 2024 regarding short-term rentals. Can I have a motion to reopen? In a second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. We have on this matter received a lot of good and constructive comment over the months that we've been working on it. And Molly has some clarifying changes that I think she would like to offer.
So, taking a lot of the comments that we've received into consideration, speaking with the lawyers. Let's see. I would like to suggest that we, hang on, just find the changes, remove from section 8-327B the information about vehicles. So we would be removing, the thought is to remove the words "and the model year, color, and vehicle registration of all motor vehicles used by such renters." And then to make the previous sentence make sense, after the word renters, instead of a comma, we would insert the word "and." So it would say phone numbers of the renters and the date of rental period.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you are. Do you mind starting?
Sure. Okay, no problem. So section 8-327 under owner's obligations, section B.
Okay.
So at a previous meeting, we had removed all the other references to vehicles, and this one got left in for some reason. So it would be to this, the thought would be to remove the words "and the model, year, color, and vehicle registration of all motor vehicles used by such renters." And then, like I said, to make the other sentence make sense, add the word "and" where it says the phone numbers of the renters and the date of the rental period instead of having a comma. So that's one suggestion. And the other area that seemed to be causing a lot of confusion is the section above that, 8-326, under occupancy, location, limits, and other requirements. So section B, quite a few people found that confusing. So the suggestion is, let's see, in the first sentence, it says the maximum occupancy for the dwelling unit shall be 2 persons per bedroom. And then to add a sentence that says, this is a method of calculation of occupancy of the dwelling unit as a whole and not a restriction on how bedrooms are used, but then to retain the remaining language. So the intent there is that the OWTS, your on-site water treatment system, is calculated by the number of bedrooms. You know, so if you have a septic system, you have a 3-bedroom septic system, it presumes 2 people per bedroom. So a 3-bedroom septic system is for 6 people, a 4-bedroom for 8 people, but it doesn't matter where they sleep. So we wanted to change this language because it seemed to indicate to people that the town would care where people were sleeping when we don't. Yeah, to make it make more sense. Does that make sense?
I'm following you. Yep.
Okay. And then I think we had one other suggestion on the last section. Section 8-330, enforcement penalty for violations. The suggestion would be to remove section C altogether.
8-33.
So the last section, oh no, second to last section, 8-330, under enforcement penalty for violations, to remove section C. So these are all suggestions that came from the communications that we've had from different residents, and we thought that that might make it make more sense.
Do you follow that motion, Millie?
Yes, I will just need to get the language back in the sentence study. Yes.
Molly, would you like to make that as a motion?
Sure. I'll make that as a motion to change those 3 sections, to strike the 2 sections and add the other.
There a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. So that's what we have before us for hearing. Who would like to start?
Well, can we say tape? Or we wait until last?
We're in a public hearing, so we're gonna let people speak
Yep,
and then,
yes, speak first.
yes.
Good evening. My name is Greg Marks. I am a Rhode Island resident, a Block Island property owner, and a Block Island registered owner. I'm counting the days that I can retire full-time on Block Island. I am here to express my opposition to this current draft of the short-term rental ordinance that this town council has set forth. As a Block Island property owner, I am at a loss at how this draft has come into existence. I wrote a letter to each and every one of you directly before last September's town council meeting about this ordinance and its proposal. I could not attend due to my 24-hour shift as a full-time first responder. Like, only 2 of you acknowledged me, Ms. O'Neill and Ms. Ball. Ms. Ball even went out of her way to call me and have a lengthy conversation about this topic. Let's fast forward to 3/2024, the meeting where you state that it was a continuing discussion about short-term rentals, but nowhere in the agenda or even in the minutes were the word short-term rental ordinance. Instead, it stated accessory dwelling units. I waited to decipher every agenda and every meeting to see when this topic's to be addressed. Transparency. Now let's discuss why this was drafted in the first place. What purpose or what problem was it to address? Is it for affordable housing initiative? Is it to hire someone to govern and inspect over 500 short-term rental properties on this island? Is it to limit their vehicles on the island? Is it just a money grab of $250 per property? What is the problem and what is the goal? These questions have been asked numerous times for property owners in the past 8 to 10 months, either verbally in front of the council during an open mic meeting, via email sent to the town clerk, or directly to you. None of you have been able to answer us. What has happened is we, as the general public, have been left in the dark and left to ask the same questions repeatedly. As a result, I have requested an APRA, Access to Public Records Act, from the town council, submitted on May 4th, 2024, for the following: any and all correspondence, email communications, drafts, agendas, documents, recordings, or discussion points associated with short-term rental ordinance proposals. Specifically, how it originated, manner it was initiated, and what instigated the initial proposal. Any and all documents in all formats, including emails regarding short-term rental ordinance inquiries submitted by the public, all minutes from the town council meetings that discuss it, All correspondence, emails, letters, text messages, message town members have received by public in regards to short-term rental ordinance. All documentation, communications, emails, correspondence, and communications involving public safety concerns as they relate to New Shoreham short-term rental properties. Another question that has been asked repeatedly and remains unanswered is what data in the form of either noise complaints, police response, and/or residential complaints cause an alarm to the point of warranting this ordinance? Can you provide statistics or evidence of any safety-related incidents associated with short-term rentals? When asked this question during the September 2023 Town Council meeting on this subject about how many calls the police department were made because of short-term rentals, the answer of the council was a lot. But none of you had a correct answer. As a result, I sent in for a second APRA report filed to the Town of New Shoreham Police Department on May 4th, 2024. For all documents, reports, citations, phone logs, dispatch calls, warnings issued associated with complaints involving short-term rentals, excluding hotel beds and breakfast properties for the time being of January 1st, 2019 to the present. Yeah, another question with many of us are waiting for an answer is how the short-term proposal was drafted. Specifically, which towns did you model this ordinance after? Why did you choose those towns? Was Block Island's uniqueness considered when using other towns as a template? And if so, in what way? If you are serious about solving problems about short-term rentals as a council, which again, you have not identified as a problem, why haven't you created a subcommittee to spearhead this ordinance? A subcommittee that is created with vested and interested Block Island individuals like realtors, current short-term rental owners, year-long residents, police, fire, and EMS to study aspects of this issue. After all, shouldn't this council want to involve this community and get us to work together to better understand if there was a need for a short-term ordinance in the first place? I'm the first one to raise my hand to volunteer for that committee. Have you taken into account the National League of Cities and Towns? Their guide that is representing over 200 million people in this country published a guide for municipalities and local governments on how to navigate short-term rental regulations. Do you know what this guide says for their top recommendations? Number one, gather data. 2, engage a diverse group of stakeholders. 3, identify goals with community participation. 4, establish a feedback loop. Basically, this guide tells you that in order for you to have a viable regulation, you need to first gain support and trust from your community. Next, did this town council consider that the state of Rhode Island already requires a registration for all short-term rentals with a registration fee of $50? This database for all registered short-term rentals already exists. You can access this through the state of Rhode Island DVR, which includes all third-party vendors, Airbnb, Vrbo, and HomeAway. Already, all short-term rental owners must pay 8% tax monthly to their short-term rental property. 7% goes to state, 1% goes to New Shoreham. Where does that 1% go? What part of that 1% tax annually collected by this town from short-term rentals is used to address public safety concerns that this ordinance seeks to address? To this council's proposed short-term rental ordinance as a definition of a bedroom, how will this town consider that many of these homes, such as which participate in short-term rentals on Block Island, are historic significance and will not and could not fit within a proposed definition of the draft of this ordinance? Has an example been discussed for historical style properties? What about financial hardships that owners must sustain when they must change, redesign, or rebuild their homes due to this ordinance? Who is going to pay for that? This is exactly why we need to have a subcommittee studying short-term rentals with everyone participating. What about timeshare units? Island Manor, Neptune House, are they exempt? They are short-term rentals. They are here for 1 week. A local representative. Did anyone in this town council consider that short-term rental owners who live in Rhode Island? In a proposed ordinance, it states said individual must physically be on the island, but then below it states must respond within 2 hours. I live in South Kingstown. I live 10 minutes from the ferry. This should be more than adequate for me to be a local representative without physically being on the island 24/7. This town council has failed to do all the above. Not once has the public been asked to fully participate in the study of this issue other than moments like this. Having open mic nights at a town meeting is not having community completely involved. Not once has the town provided myself or others with detailed answers to a multitude of questions that included like this. I have read countless letters from disgruntled community members. I have examples, I have a pile high of letters from people. Nancy Piker's real estate agent said it would have to be it would have been appropriate to have assigned a focus group to craft this potential ordinance that included a real estate agent along with a member of affordable housing and another private citizen. Colleen Palmer wrote, how many calls have the police received over the past couple of years related to noise and disorderly conduct? All these calls, how many were related to short-term rentals? And this is one of the reasons why I filed the app report with the New Shore Police Department. Something I didn't want to do. I didn't want to burden them with that, but we have to have the answers, and you have not given it to us. One last letter that someone wrote was from Lavina Mackel, and if she's here, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, and Sandy Grinley. They wrote, we rent our home to defer the cost of our mortgage while our 3 young kids are in school. As soon as we can, we plan to stop renting our house. But in the meantime, we are forced to sell if we cannot rent it out part-time. In closing, I fully support a transparent process of discussing topics that affect our town. But without full access, a widely educated and notified public that includes property owners not residing on the island, any final solution to any problems that still need to be articulated will not be attained. As a result, I, on behalf, quite frankly, most of this community, must hold this town council accountable for not allowing appropriate time in a proper manner on how to handle this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Who's next? Sue? Tom, does that one work too?
Oh, sorry.
No, I just want it for people on that side, if it's.
I'm not sure.
You can use that one. Just make sure the green light goes on when you use it.
Okay, well,
Thank
I made it this far already, so I
Totally fine.
may as well
Just
stay here.
occurred to me when you-
Sue Gibbons, I'm a year-round resident, a property owner, and I rent my house short-term, by owner. I have a couple of questions. One is related to, and it, depending on the answer to my first question, some of my other information may not have to be asked. The inspection process that you're suggesting, when does council imagine that those inspections will take place? Like
Go ahead.
during the year?
Answer. Go ahead.
So my understanding, the way that we've written this is that it'll only be inspected for a reason. So if a tenant calls the town and says, I think this house is unsafe, or there aren't smoke alarms, or then it will be inspected. But there's no expectation of inspecting all the houses.
Okay, because that would certainly put you in a place that the money coming in
Sure.
would never be able to go around on who you would have to hire to make this stuff happen.
Mhm.
My next question is more related to the numbers on Block Island. By my estimation, just looking things up, we have about 2,000 homes on Block Island. And we're suggesting that about 500 of them are rented. So that's 25% of the houses out here that participate in the short term. If those are correct, those numbers, that's 25%. So there is an awful lot of community negativity and pushback towards this. I have not yet at one of these meetings heard a resident say anything in support of this ordinance. So one of my questions is, when do we hit the point on Block Island that this is not a vote for council, but it's a vote for community to decide whether an ordinance that would impact 25% of homeowners would pass? I think this is a very large issue. And I think it's bigger than we're thinking about, and I'm not sure it should just be. I recognize that our town councilors, that's you, work very hard and are elected in order to represent us. But there are many other issues that do go to general public vote, and perhaps this is one that should. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question that directly relates to something Sue said. The ordinance reads, upon registration, the dwelling unit shall be subject to inspection by the zoning official and or fire chief or the designee. The occurrence of inspection shall be within the discretion of said individuals. The purpose of inspection is to determine the occupancy limit of the dwelling unit pursuant to 8326 of this chapter, and to determine the smoke and carbon monoxide dioxide detectors are installed. So that sounds a lot broader than if somebody complains.
Yes.
It certainly leaves a lot
So-
more latitude.
I think, is Nick on this meeting? Because maybe this would be someplace that Nick could clarify, but my understanding of the way it was written was that it shall be subject to, but that doesn't mean shall be done. The
That's-
owner on the
Go ahead, Mark.
application certifies that they have done all these things, so the owner of the structure or the home on the application certifies that they have all these things. And then,
Nick, are you on?
I am, that's correct, Molly. It's not a mandatory, as it's written,
We
it's
can't
not
hear
a
you.
mandatory,
We can't hear you.
nothing.
Nick, you're muted or something.
No,
Because he can't hear us either.
nothing.
Nick, you got that?
Yeah, nothing, Millie?
You're set now.
Great. Molly, you're right. It's as it reads, as it's drafted. Upon registration, a short-term rental unit is subject to inspection. It doesn't mean that that inspection is mandatory or going to happen by any means. I agree with a member of the public who spoke that that would be a significant burden on the town, and that's not what it's not mandated, but it could happen in the discretion of the town.
Thank you, that's what I was asking.
Hello, how are you,
So-
man?
Hi, everybody.
So-
Good
sorry,
evening.
sorry. Hold on, Molly was
I
just
just wanna
finishing.
pop in and I want to say, like, so there's a lot of people here and, I just want to clarify that because the way open meetings laws work, the five of us cannot talk about a topic together unless we're at a meeting. And so at the beginning of our terms, which was about 18 months ago, the topics that I think we had a meeting with the planning board, we came up with topics that but could be things that we would investigate. And the way it works is that, so two people on the board can get together and work on different topics. So like Neil and Martha worked on parking. Keith and I got short-term rental. Tonight, I'm really feeling like I got the short end of I got the short straw. But I just wanted to explain why Keith and I are a little more familiar with the document. That's why, because we can't share it. You know, we can't like all get together in a separate meeting outside of a meeting that's for the public. So I just wanted to explain that.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Steve Miller, live on West Side Road. I'm a full-time resident. I'd like to thank the town council for all the work that they do. I appreciate it. And I wanted to preface the letter I'm going to read to you by saying that every single one of the two people that I have met, and I know almost everybody in this room, that is in favor of this ordinance can only cite one reason why we should have it, and that is, well, other towns have it. And that's a bad reason. Dear council members, I am standing before you tonight to urge you to table or reject the short-term rental ordinance, and for the following reasons. One, the ordinance is redundant in that island property owners are already required by the state STR to register, pay a hefty tax in addition to the 1% Block Island tax and state and federal income tax. Do we really need yet another layer of bureaucracy, paperwork, and expense? Number two, It has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that existing laws are unable to handle whatever problems may stem from short-term rentals, or that there even exists a significant short-term rental problem. Thus, the ordinance seems to many to be an answer in search of a problem. 3, almost nobody I know on the island, whether they live here or just own property, thinks the proposed ordinance is a good idea. Further, most feel strongly that it is unnecessarily burdensome. Excuse me. You risk enacting legislation that a substantial majority of the electorate and the non-voting property owners are against. One of the least appealing things about today's America is the perception that we are not represented by those who make laws. Some feel that this is the case already here on the island, and enacting an unpopular, redundant, and demonstrably unnecessary ordinance will go a long way towards strengthening that sentiment. And 4, on a more personal note, the number of licenses, fees, and paperwork required to live life and run a few businesses on Block Island is already overwhelming. Please do not add to this when there is seemingly insufficient reason for so doing. Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Joe?
Good evening.
Hey, Joe.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
So my name is Joe Loya, for those of you who don't already know me. I'm also president of the Block Island Residents Association. We represent over 500 members who are both full-time residents living on the island and many people who are homeowners, tax-paying, non-voting homeowners. So first of all, BIRA does not in principle oppose regulation of short-term rentals, if there is in fact a demonstrated need for such regulation. However, as we have heard tonight already, we do not believe we have seen the empirical evidence that we think is required to justify adoption of this proposed regulation. Under the first section, legislative findings, the draft states short-term rentals, if unregulated, can have negative impacts on the community, and several negative impacts are listed: noise, congestion, pollution, disorderly behavior involving renters and other persons on and near premises, as well as violations of town ordinances, including zoning and noise ordinances, and violations of state law. What's missing from this list, particularly as it is included under legislative findings, are the number and frequency of instances any of these negative impacts have in fact occurred. So I'm restating what we've already heard this evening, but the question is how many and what percentage of these incidents relate to short-term rentals? My second point is that we believe the town should increase its enforcement of existing ordinances already on the books relating to quality of life on Block Island. At last September's meeting, when an earlier draft of this ordinance was presented, he stated that there were plenty of cases of the police being called to unruly houses, but that he did not think that citations were issued. It was also not stated that these unruly houses were occupied by renters and not owners or owners' guests. The enforcement provisions in the proposed ordinance only relate to filing compliance, failure to update the filing, not properly stating the number of bedrooms in the filing. These provisions do not appear to have anything directly to do with improving the behavior of renters. BIRA fully supports the enforcement of local and state ordinances regarding noise, congestion, pollution, disorderly behavior, as well as the zoning ordinances that relate and govern occupancy. However, before instituting an additional set of new regulations, the town needs to understand and remedy why the current regulations regarding noise and other relevant issues are not being enforced, and what the problems are that we are actually trying to address with this ordinance. My closing comment is that we recognize that the island's ability to accommodate an ever-increasing level of summer tourism may have already reached a tipping point. We urge the town council to consider this draft ordinance and the need for it, if any, in the context of a broader effort to stem the tide of what is becoming unbridled tourism and its detrimental impact on the island's infrastructure and ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, Chris, come on up.
Chris Blaine, I'd like to speak as a minority here. I'm assuming that everybody that's spoken already rents. And I'm one of the few people that don't. And I can tell this council that if you happen to live in a residential neighborhood and every building around you is used commercially, it makes it very unpleasant. Tonight, we've got the windows open, the doors open, it's peaceful, it's quiet. You try doing that when 15 feet away from your front door or your windows is a dirt road. And you have 15 to 20 trips a day. And that's just by the renters, by the way. That's not counting all the other people that have to service that house. Whether it's the house cleaners, the realtors, the agents, the deliveries, the repairs, laundry, whatever it is. This is a commercial use of a residential property. And this same fight, and I'm not saying we should have it because other places do, take a look. From Connecticut to California, from Massachusetts to Maryland, all these things are coming out. People have woken up and said, hey, I live in a residential neighborhood. Why am I putting up with the commercial use of the property next to me? You know, if I was downtown and I was in a hotel, wherever it was, Block Island, Bermuda, okay, you're in a commercial zone, you got to put up with the noise. You're going to have trouble parking. Every single thing that people have brought up, the police department may not have documented every single time they've been called, but I can tell you how many times I've called and how many times I've called realtors. And it's kind of disappointing the response you get. Primarily, these things happen in the evening. Many times alcohol is involved. And I'll tell you how I know that because I've had interactions with some of these people. I've had trash thrown onto my property over a wall. If I had the audacity to speak to somebody about trespassing, beer bottles and cans, and these were renters. I talked to somebody about the number of people, and a direct quote from the renter was, the realtor told me I'm renting this house for this much money per week. I can do whatever I want. That's it. And there's no recourse. 8, 10, 12 people in a house, no problem. I think you should look at what's going on as we speak on Nantucket. Because right now, tonight, there's a very important decision they're going to make on short-term rentals. And it's a very polarizing issue. I know a lot of people have said, well, we've always done this. Zoning exists to protect people no matter what part of the island they're in. And if the numbers are anywhere near right, Sue Gibbons said 25%, maybe. The DBR, they say 402 houses on Block Island are listed as short-term rentals. I find that a little hard to believe, but it's possible. So let's throw that number out there, 25%. Is it reasonable for 25% of the people on this island, by the way, many of them who don't live here, and not during the summer months when this impacts us the most, to have that much impact on the rest of us who are trying to live a quiet life? You know, I watch some of the things that go on. All you need to see is the trash truck go to these places. People that are renting a house for a week generate more trash than I could in a month. It's unbelievable. And if you don't think that impacts our transfer station, our water, our sewer, people say, well, private homes aren't on sewer. No, but the waste from when their septic system is overloaded has to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant. I know this for a fact. You've got a lot of people that have been used to being able to say, call the realtor. You can't find who the owner is. And if you could find who the owner is, if you really dig down, it's going to be very hard to get in touch with them because they're probably not going to answer the phone. And you can't just go knock on a door. Those days are over. So at the very least, put a mechanism in place here so that all of these concerns can be addressed. If there's a police report, it needs to be reported. What for? What was the cause? What was the resolution? Citation issued? Was the law broken? Everyone says there's no information. I'm speaking from personal experience, not from hearsay. And I can tell you, you live in an area where you're surrounded by rental homes that are short-term rentals. And I mean short-term rentals in that no one lives there in the winter. When the rental season is over, the places are closed up tight and no one comes into them again to live until after Memorial Day, or right around Memorial Day. The owners don't live there. Nobody lives there. And to me, that's the definition of a business in a residential zone. Primary use is rental. And I think it's against zoning. So you could very well end up in the same position Nantucket's in. So I urge the council to stay the course.
Here, Chris. Who's next? Anybody? Come up.
My name is Sharon Sevilla, and I spoke in September. I asked a lot of the same questions that have been asked as what triggered this. So I've owned a house on the island for 10 years. Somebody else managed it when I first bought it. I bought it thinking that I would have this rental so I could pay for the mortgage. I'm not independently wealthy. So I hear what you're saying, Chris. And I have actually been living out here part of the year round, coming and going. As an Airbnb person, I don't have a realtor, I have Airbnb. I have a book that lists all the things you want me to have. I have I checked my I have fire extinguishers, smoke and carbon detectors. I actually write in my description the quiet hours and the impact if the police are called. In my statement on Airbnb, it says you can be kicked out of the property and forfeit all your funds. So I've already taken a lot of these steps because I know my neighbors, because I am on the island.
Sure.
And I want to represent a little bit of a different idea. I wasn't on the island for part of the year last year, and I had a co-host, a person who is an experienced hospitality person, managed property. We had some problems with one of my neighbors who tipples a little bit, lives here, and gave my renters a hard time, complaining at 1 o'clock in the afternoon that the children playing in the yard overexcited her dog. Literally came out and yelled at renters. So there's another side to it too. I try to be a very good landlord, host. I've even put in like big privet hedges to try to create privacy. All I'm saying is this is a very complex issue. And I do understand and respect what Chris is saying. And I know my neighbors, and I've gotten feedback from them. I made a big mistake the first year I started doing this myself. I rented to a group of young men who were awful. And I had the police come, and I learned a very painful lesson. I sat down and talked to my neighbors. They gave me some constructive feedback. So I've really worked really hard to do this. This ordinance, I'm not sure that it's going to be negative for me financially, but if we keep trying to restrict it, and I do use this money to pay my mortgage, I am faced, and I've had a couple of other people I've talked to say they're faced with, am I going to have to sell this house that I loved and worked so hard for because I can't afford to pay the bills, the ever increasing taxes and bills that are happening on Block Island. So I like the idea, and I offered in September also to join a subcommittee. I just wish that we had come up with this regulation in a little bit more cooperative and transparent manner. Had people like Chris on it, as well as those of us who do rent. So thank you for listening,
Sharon.
and I appreciate your work, but
Thank you.
I think we're not.
Before you go, I just want to ask, like, what do you think will materially change for you with the ordinance? So pretty much it's just filing a form online, paying $250, right? Then the town has your contact information.
What
And
I
so-
think-
But I'm wondering, so I guess what I'm saying is, if your house is legal to rent right now, which I'm sure it is, I'm sure they all are, right? Well, not sure they all are, but I guess what I wanted to say is that nothing's gonna change. So why?
I think the
but
subtlety
you
that's
do
gonna change.
seem to have some anxiety about it, so I'm just wondering where what that is.
I do think that what is going to change is I think it puts us at a risk of, and neighbors who are going to say, oh, well, I'm going to report you and I'm going to, I don't want you there. There's a couple of people in our neighborhood, and our neighborhood is an interesting one where there's probably about half and half renters and people who come for the summer. I feel like we're opening a can of worms where we're going to become like the enemy for some people, and they're going to say, oh, well, you're breaking the ordinance, and it's going to be really disruptive in the sense that we're going to be targeted a little bit. That I feel like this is targeting people who are trying to do something. When they bought the house, they thought they could.
So, because I don't see anything changing, but I think maybe I'm just like, maybe I and Keith are just too deep in this at this point, right, to see it that way. But so I don't see how that would change other than you would be registered, like.
But I am registered now. I am registered.
Right, so let me explain about the DBR, right? So like through this process, right? Like I've got an entire book of notes from the last year and a half of, so, when I spoke to the people at DBR, here's the difference, right? So Department of Business Regulations has you register for a 2-year license. But you register, you pay the $50, that's it. So when I asked him, I said, do you check to make sure that their rental complies with local zoning? He was like, oh, no, we don't do any of that. He said, we haven't hired any new employees. We just set this up and it's on go. And so this was not, I don't think this was on anybody's mind when we started this, right? This came out of a meeting with planning, like, what are some things we could address? But one of the things we've discovered in the process is there are a lot of illegal rentals going on. So, and that's not your situation. Right?
I'm just saying, but don't you already have regulations to do something about them now?
So, but we don't have staffing for that.
So, but you just said earlier, you're not going to have staffing now. You're not going to come and do a mandatory check.
Oh, we're not, no, that's not it, right? So here's the thing, right? When you apply for the license, you have a house that conforms to the zoning, no problem. So let's say I have an accessory structure on my property, right? And there's a couple bedrooms up there and a bathroom, there's no kitchen. I can't rent that. It's an accessory structure. So, but if I were to rent it, or if I were to try to get the license for it, I won't be able to get the license for it. It doesn't conform. I can't rent that as a rental. So we all know that that doesn't mean that people aren't doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? So this is one of the things that was sort of an unintended revelation in this process, was like, oh, so that's a good thing, right? Because the only way that you can rent an accessory structure is you can rent it with your main structure, right? So I could rent my house and my barn together, or I could file with the town and convert that to a 513, which would be great for someone who wanted year-round housing. So those are the only two ways that you can legally rent an accessory structure. So I think during this process, that is something we discovered that might be a perk to this, because it would cut down on illegal rentals, right? Which is good for you, because if somebody can't rent something illegal, they're going to rent something legal, which is yours, right? So it's not a bad, catching illegal rentals is, we're not catching them, but they just can't get a permit. That's it.
But you said yourself, is this really gonna stop that?
So, I mean, so the way this ordinance is written, there is a penalty. So, yeah, I mean, with the fee, if this were passed, right, with the fees.
Yeah.
We would be able to add 10 hours a week to a clerk position in the building office, and that clerk's 10 extra hours a week would be enforcement, which we don't have right now. So, yes, that person would be, so when I spoke to like the people in Newport who do this, right? There's companies that do this, so you could hire a company to do this, right? Or you could hire a person to do it, and the person would just come through online house listings, to look for any that don't have a registration number. Just pretty much that's how towns do it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess you could do that now without an ordinance.
Who would do that now?
I don't know. I can't answer that, but 10 hours a week, would that make that much difference?
I think it would. I think that we don't have enough manpower in that office right now with the amount of building that's going on and the growth in that office. There isn't time for a person they will act on a complaint, right? So if your neighbor called and complained, they would have to act on that complaint.
So you said they don't act on the complaint. So, I mean, right now we have complaints. Isn't that a mechanism that you could already follow up on?
Who?
The police, they show up at the house.
I don't think the police do zoning issues.
Okay. Then I don't have that answer for you.
Yeah.
But no,
I
so what you're
so-
saying is you wanna create this so you can find the somewhat less than 25% of the people, or which was probably a fairly smaller number, I would hope, that aren't renting legally.
It's just one sort of byproduct that we like going through this process that we've discovered. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on.
No,
the hot
I
seat
don't,
here.
I
Sorry
don't
about
feel,
that.
I think this is a
So-
good discussion, but I think that this would have been a great discussion when some of us stood up here and asked to participate in these conversations last September. And I think that's part of some of our frustration, is that some of this was done, I don't know who Nick is, I assume he's a consultant.
Is our
Lawyer.
He's a lawyer. So, we have somebody else, I believe there was a consultant that pulled some of this together when I was here in September, or somebody else pulled
No.
some of this information. There was somebody you were referring to in September who compiled this regulation. There were people who offered to participate in a subcommittee, and that was never even done to my knowledge. I feel like if this had been done in more of a participatory manner, you wouldn't have the anxiety that I think some of us feel, that we're sort of being targeted. I will be really honest. One of my concerns really is that I have a couple of neighbors who hate rentals and complain about them all the time. One who attacked a guest that was coming into my house who had his own personal moped, hadn't even checked in yet. There's no sign on my road that says no mopeds. I do have it in my listing, private property, you can't have a moped. He was coming to visit a friend. There was a huge blow up. It was embarrassing.
Mhm.
It was horrible. I mean, I heard about it from 8 different people. I was not on the island that day. My co-host was. It was just a horrible situation, curse words, children around, and that wasn't my guest. I just think there's two sides of it that can create, because there is anxiety on the island. The island is changing.
Yep.
And you're right, maybe something has to happen, and I'm not disagreeing with that. All I'm saying is I wish this had been done in a more participatory, inclusive manner.
Great. Thank you. Sue?
Just quickly, I think that Sharon, right, has some very good points to make here.
I think I feel two sides to the regulation that we seem to be trying to do. There's the egregious problems that probably very occasionally show up in overcrowded, drunken homes, some of which may be rented and some of which are owned. And I will say my evidence is anecdotal, of course, but the people who wake me up at night in the summer own their home. They are not renters. So this wouldn't have any impact on them. All of those complaints, it seems to me, should go directly to the police. And someone in a town office working 10 hours a week is going to have no ability to have an impact on that. So Molly, when you wonder why there is anxiety or frustration around this ordinance, we keep finding things, or people keep finding things in this to say, well, what about this? And what you say is, oh, we're not really going to do that. So how do I know that when I read this? This piece of paper has a lot of things that would have a huge impact on short-term renters. And as Sharon pointed out, could pit neighbor against neighbor. And we do have issues in the summer with overcrowding, and we all have frayed tempers by the end of August. I'm far nicer to people in June than I am in August when their mopeds are on dirt roads and things like that. We all are. But still, I think we're placing a layer here that has more of the potential to cause trouble than it has to solve an issue that needs to be mostly solved through either the existing issues, like registering with the state and making sure your renters pay attention to the rules. All people who rent their homes have rules. The realtors have most of them, and the realtors have a lot of rules. Those of us who rent privately also have rules. Frankly, I think my renters rise to the level that I expect them to behave at, because I meet them and explain who I am, and I shake their hands and they know who I am. And so they're easily shamed by bad behavior. I don't want to put in an obvious place in my house this notice about how they will be liable if they cause noise or damage, because I feel like it puts people on the offensive right away, or on the defense. Once you have people defensive, their behavior may be worse than it was when you said, oh, have such a lovely time, and please call me if you have any trouble. And we are already doing that.
Greg Marks again.
Before you start.
Yes.
I want to make sure that everybody who wants to.
I'll be
has a
very
choice
quick,
to
30
speak.
seconds.
No, I want to wait and,
Okay.
and see, and you can have your second turn after everybody's had their first. Anybody else? Yes, Pat. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see, no, Pat had her hand up and I didn't see you get out. No, you didn't. I missed you.
So I wrote a letter and I sent it in, and I'm assuming you received it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to read the letter, but I'm going to touch upon some of the points. And the first is that from the very beginning, as the first gentleman who spoke this evening said, and as many of us brokers and real estate agents have asked, from day one, what is the reason for this? Can you please tell us what we're trying to solve or resolve? What are the issues? And what we've been told is it's 513s, that we're going to get 513s. And you know what? It's wonderful that the council's looking for 513s. And if we need 513s, it's a great goal. However, it's an ordinance that there's no enforcement and it's not working and there's abuse. So I don't think that creating an ordinance to try to fix another ordinance is at all straightforward or honest or good business. So that's the first thing. The second part is the tone. The tone of this ordinance is, I mean, I could repeat some language in this that is intrusive, abusive. It's not working together. It's not trying to solve a problem. It's pointing fingers, it's being demeaning. The tone is terrible. And I think that's partially because it's cut and paste from all these different towns. It was not written for Block Island. Parts were taken from all over the place, and it's just it reads badly. It's easy to dislike it. It really is. Where I think that if it was written maybe by a group of people working together, we could get a consensus on something. Now, what I think a consensus maybe could be is if you feel like a database is needed for the police department or the fire department, I think that's easily done. I don't think it's going to be costing. I don't think you're gonna need somebody 10 hours a week in the town hall, and I don't think it's gonna cost every owner $250. But if you feel like that's what it is, maybe that's where you should start, asking the realtors for what homes they rent. Asking realtors for the name of every single tenant, what are you gonna do with that information? Is somebody in 10 hours a week going to file all of that information in the town hall? Thankfully, you took out the information about the car because that was like absolutely absurd. But so the tone, the enforcement, I don't understand. The 10 hours a week is not going to be very effective. The name of all tenants, and I guess overall just the tone. I would suggest you put it aside. Put it aside, and if you want an ordinance, draw one up that reflects the needs of Block Island. Make it appropriate to Block Island. Make it succinct and to the point. Use language which isn't divisive. If your goal is to fix 513s, then address that ordinance and then create that and be straightforward with it. Thank you.
Pat?
So Jennifer, I just want to say, like, the 513s is not a reason, it's sort of like a byproduct-y thing that we realized as we were working on this, that it could have the potential to create more. That I don't think that was ever anybody's reason to do it. I just want to clarify that because maybe I misspoke.
That we've been given, because there isn't any information about the police department or the fire department has also. We're not getting anything else from you. We're not getting any other reason for this, except for the fact you want 513s. And again, it's a lofty, wonderful reason, but not to involve, not to create an ordinance to fix an ordinance. That's my objection.
And I misspoke terribly if I led you to believe that that was a purpose of this. It just would be sort of like a happy byproduct.
Pat?
Okay, thank you, Molly.
Yeah, yes, please. Sorry, Pat.
I hadn't planned to speak. My name is Pat Doyle. I live on High Street, which is a mixed residential commercial area. My husband and I have owned our home for 34 years. We have only once called the police because of a noise ordinance in a commercial, a hotel, and the police handled it very well. Usually we step in ourselves because we're there, but I began to think more and more about short-term rentals. I've been on our school committee off and on for almost 10 years. I would say at least half of the teachers who we were able to hire, we could hire because there's such a thing as short-term rentals, thank God. And then of course, afterwards, this town has just been amazing in finding more affordable housing. But we still have dozens of people that start out here as a short-term rental. I think if I turned around and said, how many here tonight first were introduced to Block Island as a short-term rental? You came to a wedding, a graduation, you came to work at the medical center, work at the school, work on the roads, whatever you did. It started as a short-term rental. And I do believe that registering is important. There should be some registration system. But after having attended last night's town meeting where we are desperate to do some things that need to be done in this community, do we really need to hire another person to check out whether the rules of the game, which have been there for years, are being followed? I really think you have to stop, because the minute you put in a new employee with a new title, that person's here for life. And we say,
Can I clarify?
Sure,
that-
Molly.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify before you go too far, because it's a part-time employee that already exists in the office. That the position is a part-time position that would have hours added to it.
Wonderful.
That's all.
That's the way I think it should be.
And the pay was approved last night.
Uh-huh. But to
can
make
be
sure
rescinded.
that people, it does, the way it's written now, I very much feel that it has been written in a very negative way, created a problem in the community, and maybe there wasn't enough to do in this community on the part of the folks who run the community. But I think this was not something of all of the things that we're facing. New bonding issues, of additions to our fire department, our rescue. This has taken a lot of air out of people's, and I don't think it's where the focus should be. I think we all meet people and say, how did you get to Block Island? It's a curiosity we have. And I would say many of them came and said, I was there one day, I fell in love with it, and I was determined that if I could get a job there, if I could live there someday, it was my dream. So I do feel it's a lot more going on here than just all of the issues of noise and drunkenness and what have you. It's part of the times, and I think that we as a community, as we did on that 4th of July weekend, that we knew we had to come together with our police, with our citizenry, and solve a problem before it became much bigger. But we didn't have to have a new ordinance. Perhaps there were some things that came out of that. So I'd say go slowly on this. I'm not sure we need to be hiring someone. We need to be doing the ordinance. Let's take what we have, who we have working in this community, the belief of the people like those who come here who want to maintain the quality of the community. Let's work together. I love the idea of a team coming up with something that might be written. And let's look at the positive side of short-term rentals. They're not all negative. They've brought great minds, great people, great children to our community. And let's not look at that. There's a big negative on people coming in, starting with short term. They don't generally want to come to Block Island just without having been introduced to the beauty, silence, and the order, which we do have. And I think we'll continue to. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
So Molly, can I ask a question? So for the record, I had to recuse because someone brought up the concern of my family has a rental property on the island and I would be voting on it. The Ethics Committee did find that I have no conflict of interest at all, so I will be voting on this. But this has been going on for 18 months, 17 months. You've had iterations, people come to meetings. This makes it, the people, apologize if I'm pointing at anyone, making it sound like this was done in a bubble. Many of the realtors gave direct feedback. Those were incorporated. I'm a little confused on the comments being made that this was done in a bubble when realtors were requested to give information, requested to change language. I think you guys, again, I'm a little stepped aside from it. But the tenor of this meeting, I get it's an emotional issue, but I do feel like you have worked with people as they provided feedback. This is not to say, no, I don't want it done. That's not working on the problem. The working on the solution is, what does the ordinance look like? So Jennifer, you raised language. Well, there's been how many iterations of this? Why are we now hearing about the tone?
I've gone to all the meetings.
Okay, but this is the first, so I'm just telling you. And I didn't hear anything. This is the first I'm hearing about tone of the, again, I've recused myself from the last few meetings, but have we done back and forth, Molly?
There hasn't been, I'm sorry to interrupt, there has been very little back and forth. I mean, Molly did run with this. I've never been in favor of it. I do think there should be, I hate
to interrupt you, but I'm asking Molly to just clarify how much interaction there's been from your perspective.
First, I want to clarify that the last meeting is this meeting because it was continued. So the changes that we made at the beginning of this meeting were sort of from information taken at the first half of the meeting, and also input from phone calls, emails, personal conversations. So there's been lots of input. I know Keith gets lots of input from people. I get a ton of input from people. I talk to Nick or email Nick when I can, you know, to bounce it, you know, like if I get it, if we, because we all get the same emails, right? But I will send the email to Nick and say, do you think this is like a concern that we should make a change on, or you know, or if we see patterns, right? So we've gotten lots of feedback. So we see lots of people who were like, this thing with the cars is crazy. Well, we did take out all the other references to automobiles. So yeah, we should take that one out too, because it was a very sticky point for people. So, but I do want to say too, also that, it wasn't meant to be adversarial at all. I mean, certainly what Pat says is true. Like, we all came here, you know, I certainly know my family came here to rent a house, you know, in the 70s, and went from being renters to renting a house. And so it's not meant to be an adversarial situation at all. And you know, to what Sue said, another actually a benefit of this will be that we have no idea how many houses rent on Block Island. No idea. Like, everybody can guess. The DBR, like Chris said, is at 402 right now. We don't know how many houses rent. And truthfully, when I asked in town hall at the very beginning of this process, it was difficult for anyone to pin down how many houses exist on the island. I'm sure that number is available somewhere. I did not find it that day. So data would be an excellent driver for this. We would know how many houses are renting. It's a great thing when we're applying for, when we apply for grants and things, you have to have data. And also to speak to, I forget who brought up, Chris brought up the, you know, there's that whole report from the Tourism Council on the invisible cost of tourism. And that is a factor, right? So when somebody has to pump their septic tank and that goes over to the sewer company to be processed, you know, we're all paying for that. You know, with the homeowner pays the septic company, but, you know, the taxpayers are paying for the cost of maintaining that facility. So it's not a great fee, but they all add up, right? The garbage adds up, the sewerage adds up, the water adds up, and, you know, this isn't gonna pay for that. It's just, it's everything is a piece of the puzzle.
Just want us to make sure that people who want to speak get an opportunity to speak, okay? Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janice Diane Turner, and I was here for another purpose totally. I actually was here to deliver a thank you letter, and I wrote the thank you letter,
Yes.
and that just kind of like passed through. But since I'm here and I'm listening, my family is indigenous to Block Island, and a descendant of Isaac Church. So I basically believe that the town council is going in a righteous direction, because when sitting in the audience here, I kind of got a sense that there's some predatory renting, some predatory landlords that are here to just like suck up what they can get and to just put it in their own pockets and line their own pockets. And so basically that does have to be addressed. I also got the sense that this is going, I did the math, and it's like 60 cents a day. Who's complaining about 60 cents a day? I don't really understand that. But I mean, and the 60 cents a day, I mean, you basically kind of do have to have someone that is going to like regulate this. It's just 10 hours a part-time day. So from all of it does seem like it just is a little bit needs to be tabled, like it's just going a little faster. However, it should eradicate predatory landlords. And if people are worried about that, having to sell their house, then perhaps they ought not be here, because you know what? I would like to come back to Block Island. My grandfather's land is somewhere over there on the Indian Cemetery, and I would like to feel that I have a place here. And I wouldn't want people here leeching off of it. People were here first,
So,
and they ought to appreciate it.
thank you, Janice. I just want to say, I have never had this sense of anyone being predatory about this. People represent their position in good faith. They reach different conclusions based upon the facts, and you know, I have to say, I for some reason, this that word really troubles me, because I think at the end of the day, for me, this is about attempting to wrap your arms around a dramatically and rapidly changing market, having the best possible information that we can have as a town government, being better able than we are now to respond when there are challenges. I actually think this was drafted, particularly when you compare it to what other towns have done with a very light touch. It's foundational, in my opinion, but reaching different conclusions on it doesn't mean, and I'm not saying you said this, Janice, but I think it's important to note, doesn't mean that someone's bad, or even frankly that someone's wrong. You know.
Some people are, when you're looking, honestly, the 513s, that's just something that is in reality, that exists.
Yeah.
There's always a good and a bad.
Sure.
And I mean, you hope that there is none, but you know, the reality is that there is, and it ought to be encouraged for, just for the simple fact that you wouldn't want people to get over. And some people brought out some points about the septic tanks and the cost and the weight of just the infrastructure just being bogged down, you know, with
Yes.
tourism. So those were valid points. So
Thank
when
you.
actually drop that document, it just seems like it's a good document, a little bit more.
Thank you, Janice.
I'd like to say something.
So can I just ask procedurally, I would like to finish the public hearing and then move on to the council conversation. If that works. I'm with you. Yep. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Phoebe, come aboard.
Hi. I just wanted to go back to the inspection clause, which was 8323. Sorry, I don't have my readers. C. I've spoken plenty of times of how I feel about this. Sorry.
Yeah, is the green light on?
Sorry. It's on, right? Okay, sorry. But and this is maybe a question for Nick, legally. Right now, the way that clause reads, it does not sound like it's discretionary. Does not sound like it is motivated by a complaint. Right now, it says shall. Upon registration, the dwelling unit shall be subject to inspection. Shall, I'm not a lawyer. I think shall is like mandatory and may is permissible. My husband's a lawyer, so like, I think I've had a lot of conversations.
I'm sorry.
about this. For what? So, but, and then it says the occurrence of an inspection shall be within the discretion of state officials. Okay, understood that. the purpose of the inspection, now I think Molly, you said the purpose of the inspection was that if it was done by a complaint, but here it's saying the purpose of the inspection is to determine the occupancy limit of the dwelling unit pursuant to 8326, this chapter determines smoke detectors. So I just think that this clause in itself is problematic and probably needs to be reworked anyway. But just in general, I think what I've listened to today, and Chris, I'm sorry that you have had bad experiences, but that can happen from renters and it can happen from homeowners. Summer months are when we get out of our houses and enjoy the nighttime and the stars and sit on our decks and perhaps party a little too loud sometimes. But it seems like this is trying to solve a lot of issues and it's not solving any of them really well. And perhaps just narrow the scope. It sounds like we have some bad actors in the community. I'm not sure that passing another ordinance is going to get those bad actors to actually register anything. They should be doing it now and they're probably not. They should be paying their tax and they're probably not. So I'm afraid that we're, again, taking a very blunt object when we need a scalpel to solve a very discrete problem. I love data. I wish that we had more data. I'm concerned that our police department doesn't have data every time they get called to a house and that's recorded in a log someplace. Like that would be a great start so that we could actually zero in on where are the problems. And we have plenty of codes that already exist for noise and disorderly behavior and all of these things that we should try to enforce. And if the point is that we don't have money to actually enforce that, then like, let's have that conversation.
Thank you, Phoebe. Nick, can you please walk us through that inspection language again? I think
Sure.
it's helpful. Thanks.
Sure, happy to, Keith. And I think in one of the first iterations of this document, we may, and I'm going off memory here, but we may have just had the first sentence, upon registration, the dwelling unit shall be subject to inspection. So again, if we just take the words literally, upon registration, you are now subject to inspection. It does not mean that an inspection is going to happen. But that issue was raised. It may have been by Phoebe, it may have been by somebody else. But with that information, we then added the second section, just to clarify that these inspections are not mandatory. They don't have to happen, but they can happen. You are subject to these inspections happening. And their happening is at the discretion of town officials. Again, we're not mandating that town officials go out and check every short-term rental unit. We have a labor problem with that alone, but go ahead. Yes.
Tell me why that language or whether that language could be the dwelling unit may be inspected by the zoning official and or fire chief.
You can make that change. I don't think that's a substantive change that would require re-advertising. So if that satisfied concerns and provided clarity, I'm comfortable with it legally.
So you want to put it where?
In the section regarding inspections,
Right, what was that?
it says, I'm sorry. And of course, now I've totally lost my place. Sorry, wait, bear with me. Yeah, shall be subject to inspection by the zoning official too. Upon registration, the dwelling unit may be inspected by the zoning official and or fire chief or their designees.
Like, not, I know where it is, but we suggesting change.
That's what I just said. Right now, it says the dwelling unit shall be subject to inspection by the zoning official and or fire chief or their designees. The change that I was describing was upon registration, the dwelling unit may be inspected by the zoning official.
That's right. No,
Get it? Did you find it?
No, I know.
You know what?
I asked about this before.
Okay.
No, I thought, I heard a word you didn't say.
Oh, okay. That happens.
So can I ask, just given all the angst around this, and whether it's tonal language or whatnot, is there ability to pause this and revisit it? I mean, to the point where we're in May, this wasn't going to take effect till January anyway, I believe. Again, I'm supportive of it. Just so people have some data. I pulled some data specific to the platforms. When we started this 18 months ago, the realtors were very adamant that they already do this, which I think we all agree. The realtors do a very good job managing their properties. When a renter has an issue or a neighbor has an issue, they know who rents that house. They call Jennifer. They call whoever it is. I think we're clear there. One of my concerns was the growing platforms of rentals that go on without really anyone looking at them. So in 2020, the island made $3,000 in the 1% tax. In 4 years, it's now $30,000. So just in 4 years, we've seen an 8 times increase in the number of homes being rented on these platforms, which again, for the rental agents, I think you're gonna see that happen more and more. Those are unmanaged in many cases, not all cases. By doing this, we can have, if there is a zoning thing in place that says they require a town zoner, a town zoning license, they cannot get on the platform without it. So by doing this, we would be able to control those people who, to Molly's point, we have no idea who's renting. So there's just some data on it. But because there's angst on this, and again, I want to be very clear, I am supportive of moving forward with this, but is there a way we can table it to get it to a better place based on where people feel like there hasn't been engagement on it?
We have the authority to continue and do do whatever. My own opinion about this is just what you described and what I said earlier. Sorry to repeat myself, but it's my nature. This market, as you just described it, is changing more rapidly than certainly I know. And I really am very concerned if we don't have some basic sort of foundational registration, some rules around, you can't stuff 5 pounds into a 1 pound bag. You have a local contact person who can be called. All of those things that I think are all of our responsible realtors provide now. I think we will regret not doing this, and I think we're already playing catch up. As to whether we should do it tonight or another night, I'm in the same place you are. I support it. I remain open to changes along the lines of the one that I just described. I know Nick, we've talked about this, but I actually, and Molly and I have talked about this. I personally think a lot of the feelings about this proposed ordinance come from when you read A, B, C, and D of the first section, the legislative findings and intent. It's more negative than it needs to be. That's you know, but that's not to me, not a substantive matter. You know, you know, it may be to Nick. But if we're, I can't remember, it was Jennifer or, one other person who said, that the tone is negative. To me, it's C and D of the first section, which are not operational, that establishes the negative tone, because the stuff we're talking about doing here, if you really drill down on it, it's $250 fee. You gotta provide a certification to the town that your septic can handle the number of people you're renting to. You know, it's actually pretty straightforward. But I do feel, and I have felt that the preamble is challenged. And again, that's, Nick, feel free to, punch me in the face, but.
Yeah, I mean, Keith, you know,
I see you, Joe, and I see you, Sue. I'm gonna get to you. Go ahead, Nick.
Just Keith, from a legal perspective, we've discussed this. I prefer
Yeah.
it stay. But I certainly appreciate the thoughts. But ultimately it is the choice of the council.
I appreciate your thoughts. Is that similar to I wish you well in all your future endeavors?
I didn't say that.
Sue and Joe both wanted to speak.
So if I may, I'd like to make a really basic suggestion. Drag it down to something much more basic. As you said, get rid of this preamble and create a simple registration form that homeowners who are renting their houses, I think the realtors are already doing it. Maybe you just need to hit the people who are not using realtors. Now, I feel able to say that because that's me, but make us tell you that we're registering our houses, how many bedrooms there are, that the septic system supports that many bedrooms, and that we have carbon monoxide detectors, and be done with it for now.
But that's what this does if you get rid of.
But you have to take, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Take a lot of this language out of there.
But
And
this
give me a
this
simple
language out of
registration
there,
form and I'd be all for it.
Sue, take a lot of this language out of here is the preamble, because the nuts and bolts of this are actually very straightforward.
So make it look
I
like
just want to
that.
give Joe had his hand up, Jennifer. What do you think, Bowen?
Joe Loya. There, may I?
Yes, please, Joe.
You know, there's been, from the very beginning, there's been a lot of consternation and a lot of confusion about what are we trying to achieve? You know, you've been hearing that from a lot of people. What problem are we going to solve? I mean, those questions have been asked constantly. And we're talking about this preamble. In layman's terms, we need to sit down and understand what are the objectives? What are the goals and objectives, to put it in non-legal
I was
terms?
just really clear about that.
Okay, but the fact is, I guess we have to take it maybe out of the legalese, because this doesn't state objectives. It's a pretty negative way of painting some kind of picture. But, you know, Neil raises, I think, a key point. We're in danger with absentee Airbnb, VRBO rentals. Those are emerging. Those homeowners aren't here. They're not managing. They're not on site. That's a specific issue. But what has happened is this has been a broad brush on largely a very compliant community when you look at the realtors and the homeowners who, you know, are on site and rent themselves. And what has happened, and I think this is part of the reason why we've created a lot of animosity here, is we've tried to solve a particular problem without saying it. And in the process, we've alienated a lot of people who do quite well and manage quite well. So my suggestion, and I would reiterate, I think start with a basic registration system. I don't think anybody would argue with the need for that. And my second suggestion is you need to throw this out and start over.
Yeah, I'm not there.
Can I say something now?
Please, Martha, thank you.
Okay, there were a couple of things that I wanted to say back along. And that was about predatory landlords. I don't think we,
that speech, that word, you know,
I think-
is a strong word, so,
It's-
squash that word.
but that isn't, I just wanted to really make it clear, that's not the issue that we have here. If someone is renting their house right now for whatever the market will bear, please hear me out. They are not going to be renting it year round for a year-round family that can live in it. It's that simple. That's the reality of the world. I'm not thrilled with it. I grew up here. I'm one of the handful of people in this room, and there are more of us than normal who actually did always live here. I just wanted to get that off the table because I don't think anybody is looking at predatory. We're looking at absentee, and that goes back to the registration, and that's what I think. And I don't think there should be any well, realtors don't have to register. Well, yeah, they do. Everybody who rents their house has to register. Everybody has to have a contact. And if you contact a gentleman who lives on High Street, if you have a local contact here, he can get a hold of you on the other side. I really think there has to be somebody local. We've had so many of these things happen where people will sign up and they'll put down somebody who, well, they're here, except maybe they're not here in January, February, March. And we've all been through this too many times. I truly, honestly, all due respect to everybody who's been talking about it, I do not believe that the houses that are rented for the summer rentals are going to be lost if there's a $250 fee. That said, I think there should be a registration fee. I would only offer for information for people who don't know, and many of you do not. I live on Mansion Road. There are, I believe, 18 houses on Mansion Road. 3 of them are year-round houses. All the rest, with the possible exception of one, is rented seasonally. I don't remember. I mean, it's Mansion Road. We haven't had any problems. And I'm off. We got the beach, for heaven's sakes. Nothing's going to compare to that traffic.
That's because your parties are so loud. You drown everybody else out.
Well, okay, you also, this is the person who was complaining about, Tristan, what was that plane? The
C-130.
C-130. Yeah, there was a C-130 circling the neck this afternoon that I was complaining about, so. I complain about the big things. Anyway, I do think, I appreciate all the work that went into this. We've got to have a better way of coming at things because, and this has happened long before this town council, long before anybody here was working. If people put lots of work into things and nobody wants to say, oh, no, we won't want to do it because somebody put so much work into it. And that's not really the way to run anything. I would say, again, to the tone of this, and this is something that seems self-explanatory. I'm going to read another section that hasn't been read before. Renters under short-term rental may be held legally responsible, subject to the penalties contained in 8(3)30 for any violation of law committed by the renter or the renter's guests while at the premises, including violation of any provisions of this chapter and or applicable laws or ordinances with state law. I would hope that anybody would be held legally responsible. We don't need our ordinance to say it. And I think that is not who we are. We aren't going to say, well, we're going to have you arrested because our ordinance says so. If it's the law, it's the law. And that seems redundant. And again, speaking to the tone that I think has set a lot of people off.
So, thank you, Martha.
Thank you for letting me speak.
So, yes. Oh, sorry, Jennifer. I told you you could speak.
Registration or database, I'm very happy with that, but I think it's reasonable and I think it would address your concerns about who's renting how many houses, how do we find them? But why would you ever need the name of every single renter and their address and phone number? That, I mean, the paperwork there alone is crazy for somebody who's gonna be working tenant. I don't understand why that information is necessary. And then my other point is, I guess when I'm talking about tone, it does start with this negative preamble and then it ends with fines. You know, it's just, there's nothing, it could be a user-friendly, let's do this together kind of document, register. Anyway, that was.
That's great. I'm being flippant, but it's a little bit of cupcakes and marshmallows. The truth is that we, yeah.
So can I just
Yeah,
address
go ahead.
that? So Jennifer, it doesn't say that the town wants that information. It's saying that the owner or the local representative, so that would be the owner if they're renting themselves, or the local representative if they have, let's say, hired a real estate agency, shall obtain accurate information, including the name, home address, and phone number of the renters and the date of the rental period. So that's,
We all have.
yeah. Yeah, so I don't think it's, I get where, but it's not saying that the town doesn't want that. But it's saying that they want you to have it.
So I'm going to suggest a couple things here. Oh, sorry, David. Yes.
David Lewis. So I've been sitting here just drinking all of this in, listening carefully to everything. Because on the one hand, it's distressing. On the other hand, it's a lot of people are speaking with emotion and they're not all wrong. I've drawn to a couple of different observations that I'd like to share. Number one, we've never been enforcing anything in this town, and it shows. I'm referring specifically to zoning ordinances, but that's not the only area. I don't think that we don't enforce the 1% affordable housing tax unless something has changed in recent years, to my knowledge. I do know people who have never filed the form. I don't know how many more there are that are like that, but we should enforce the laws that we put in place. We're terrible at collecting data, including in the police department. And that's come back to haunt us in recent years, especially with respect to mopeds and with ballards.
Yep.
We haven't learned our lesson yet, but we need to do better. And probably this is the good time to start, albeit belatedly. Lastly, in that vein, we know collectively we need to do a lot better, just plain old collecting data about the way our town operates, the underlying foundation. And this is, I think Keith gets the credit for helping me pull this into a meaningful statement. A few minutes ago, Keith referred to the fact that the dramatic changes in the tourism community in the last few years on Block Island is a foundational change that woe be it to us if we don't recognize it for what it is. And if we had been smart enough to recognize some of these changes across the past decades in my lifetime, we would have probably been somewhat better off in the community. So I think it's important to get something done here to begin to collect data. We don't have even the right mechanism for collecting data on the foundational changes that's underlying the rental community and the amount of tourism impact that that's having on our infrastructure in every respect, as well as the things that people come here to enjoy. So something needs to be done to collect that kind of data, and this ordinance or its replacement is the place to begin. And there's no better time to begin than now, because every year we don't collect the data, we're that much farther from taking it anywhere else and proving the point, even recent last night's example with the denial about we don't fit, we're a square peg fitting in a round hole on the matter of whether we're suffering from growth. And they only measure it one fine, very inaccurate way for the Block Island needs. The last thing I would say is, I think I just lost it. well, I guess then I'll stop there.
Oh, So can I answer one thing while you? think
Sure.
about that? So to the 1% affordable housing tax fee, that did become a discussion during this process. Because we don't know how many houses rent, we also don't know how many houses aren't paying that.
Agreed.
So the estimates of what we're short based on the 1% tax that goes to the state versus the 1% tax that the town receives is that we are short somewhere between $30,000 and $70,000 a year. So if you look at section 8-324, the registration form on F, number 3, all rental housing taxes for the dwelling unit have been paid. So that wouldn't become a trigger in the first year of a home's registration. So, but if this were to pass, then someone who's renting their, registering their house the second year would not be able to rent their house unless they could show that they had paid the 1% tax. Because you're right, it's not an optional tax right now, but it's self-reporting. And so we do have people who, obviously $30,000 to $70,000 worth of people who aren't self-reporting.
I agree with everything you said, and my only lament is that we did start enforcing that law, that rule, and making it non-voluntary in
Yeah.
practice several years ago.
Thank you, David.
So, thank you.
I'm going to make a suggestion, perhaps to Mount Carroll. So first of all, what David just said is really kind of where I am. I am a strong supporter of doing an ordinance, and have worked for more months than I would have anticipated with Molly and Nick and others on this. But I would like to, as I said earlier, change that shall to a may along the lines of what we described. I actually think the preamble, as I think we've all thought, really does need significant amount of work that I'm not sure we can do on the fly. So I think with the really clear statement, at least from me, that I actually think it's very important to the town to pass something on this that is substantive. And I think we have over time, when you get through the preamble, this is not a heavy touch. But I do worry about not catching everything if we do it on the fly. Does that? So I would think that we should continue this to a date certain, but soon, like in what is it? Early June.
Create something that will be reworked and then reposted.
I'm not facile enough with the rules around what requires reposting to answer that.
I assume that it would be, but we would maybe ask Nick.
Well, I think it's hard for him to answer when he doesn't know. And what I'm talking about right now is a rework and frankly, the elimination of some stuff in the preamble. And that inspection piece, making very clear to people that it is a may, not a shall. Quite frankly, other than that, I think it largely is a registration ordinance.
Could we change the may to or the shall to a may now? Or you-
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that we've heard among ourselves is that, and from the group, is that the preamble remains sort of this fundamental philosophical sticking point. And I'm sorry, Chris. And you know, I was prepared to vote for it anyway, but I mean, I because it didn't trouble me, but I get why it's troubling.
Keith, Chris?
Sure, Craig, go ahead, or Steve.
Did you make a motion to table?
No,
Or did you not?
no.
No, I just asked what the process.
Can I just make a quick point? And
Of course.
something back to what Molly said originally. She asked about the $250 filing fee that everyone would register as a short-term rental on the island. I don't have a problem with the $250. My problem is how are you still going to regulate that? There's so many people here that don't do it. I register with the state. I pay my taxes. But even with doing that, people are still going to blind eye and not do it. There's nothing changing from what you're writing on there. That's going to take that person and say, I'm going to do it. Unless they get caught with a nuisance or a call. That could be 18 years from now. Nothing's going to
Well,
change.
it could be, but that's, I gotta say that's.
It's a rolling the dice.
That,
It's
I'm
rolling the
saying
dice.
with all due respect, I think that's a fallacious argument. This.
All I'm
idea-
saying is
this
there's so many
idea-
people on
no,
this island that
I
do
let
not do
you-
it.
Greg, I let you speak. I'm gonna answer you. The idea that we shouldn't pass ordinances or government shouldn't pass laws because there will be scofflaws there, we wouldn't pass anything. The truth is that people will be scofflaws. And this is an attempt to wrap our arms around the best that we can over time to ensure that we have the best information and data and that we make an effort at enforcing what are really fundamental.
Then I have a
rules.
question for Nick. What's going to stop litigation from owners? Nick may could answer that for me.
I don't think Nick would answer that. And I-
Because it
and
could,
I
it could
didn't
happen.
either.
It could happen. That's a town expense.
Their answer is nothing stops litigation. It's America.
All I'm asking is what I said before, table it, start a subcommittee. That's all I'm asking. That's it.
We heard you. Thanks.
Just very briefly. So I've been registered for years and years, and my wife and her sister inherited their mom's house. We're superstars on Airbnb. We've had zero problems. We registered and paid the tax voluntarily. So a lot of people don't, but you think that they will, though they don't now and they're required to, that they somehow magically will. And I think that it's a great expectation. It will not come to pass.
So
You
you
already
you
have
rent
that.
through Airbnb. There's $3 million in this current calendar year that was booked through Airbnb, VRBO, and all of that. That is unmanaged by anyone right now. We don't know who those people are. There's no restriction to stop anyone from getting on that platform. So if there is a required license, we would now be able to quantify them because Airbnb won't allow them on the platform if a license is required.
Airbnb takes the tax out of our fee and pays it to the best of my knowledge. So that's
Not the
nonsensical.
1%.
We are having the money deducted and paid.
So that was my question. If you know there's a gap.
You do have to come to the microphone if you
So
want to
let me
speak,
just
so
finish
people
by
can
saying,
hear.
it just burns me up to follow the laws and to be a, whatever
So
the hell they call it.
so let me just correct you. They pay the 1% tax. They don't pay the 1%
Town.
housing, which the rental agents collect. Correct?
No, the homeowners.
Oh, the homeowner has, I thought you collected that as
Well-
well. Okay. Okay.
Well, one final word, we pay it, and we've never had any problems. And we've been doing it for a long time with zero issues or
Okay,
problems.
thank you, Steve. Thank you. This is. Sharon, just a second. Cindy Pappas hasn't spoken yet and raised her hand.
I'd just like to speak to the 1% housing board tax. The housing board tax is a mandatory fee, but there is no enforcement of it.
Right.
It is, dependent upon people doing the right thing. And thus far, the board has not taken an aggressive stance towards that. But I would like to say, in defense of the community and in defense of the housing board, looking at those statistics, is there an element of people that don't return their paperwork? Yeah, there probably is. But statistically, I feel it is very small. When we look at, who is sending in their documentation, when we look at the numbers and that steadily increasing number every year, I just 10 days ago went through the whole register, and I don't recognize everybody's name, but I was incredibly impressed by all of the names that I did recognize that were filing their fees appropriately. So I would just like to say,
Thank you, Cindy.
we're in a pretty good place
Thank you.
with that. It could be a better, I'm sure, because there will
All right.
always be people that feel that the law does not apply to them. But the majority of people are collecting that tax.
So Sharon, before you speak, can I just continue with where I was going on this? And that is, the two things that I think there's some emerging consensus around is the shall to may and the rework of and elimination of the offensive language from the preamble. In my opinion, we should continue this to a date certain, work on those things and get the draft out. But that's my opinion. I don't know where the other members are.
Yes.
What's the date certain, Millie? It's all about you.
Well, so that's why I bring up the whether we're gonna be
Right.
re-advertised. I think if it's going to be, if there's a possibility of re-advertising, then it's going to have to be the last meeting in June.
So here's what I would say. Let's continue it to a near date. And if we make changes that necessitate re-advertising, we will convene that, we'll let people know and convene that day and continue it to post advertising. Is that right? Does that not make sense? It's okay if it doesn't. It's not uncommon.
No, I'm just trying to think that through, and I hate to belabor this anymore, but if we do go to advertising, we have to advertise, and we're advertising it for a date at the end of June, but yet we have set a continued.
Okay.
with a certain date.
So would you be more comfortable if we continued to a meeting date in late June? Is that what you're saying?
If we
I'm
can-
talking procedurally. I'm not talking substantively.
If it's going to be re-advertised.
Okay.
Possibly.
Well, then let's assume that it's going to be re-advertised. Is that what you're saying?
I am, I'm going to throw another month in that we don't have a set date for that last meeting in June because it's on the agenda to set a new date.
Okay.
So, we do have, the 19th is Juneteenth, it's holiday, so we set.
How about the following Monday,
The,
26th,
the 24th,
24th?
you'll be,
That's like manna from heaven.
The 17th, the 18th, the 20th, that week would all work.
What gives you time to advertise?
I mean, I have plenty of time if it's any time during that.
Okay, let's pick that week. 20th.
That's a Thursday?
Yes. I would make a motion to continue this to January 20th. What did I say?
January.
Oh, a boy can dream. June 20th, sorry. Seconded by Tristan. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have a lot yet to do. Item number 4, hold a public hearing, discuss and act on proposed amendments.
This is where we should lock the door.
Yes. Zena, it's your turn. Jess, you didn't know how fun this is gonna be, did you? No, I'm talking to that. How are the Cubs doing? That's the important. All right, why don't we get started on the next item, which is agenda item number 4. This is to hold a public hearing, discuss and act on proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding tour businesses. This is a draft that our land use attorney Karen Browning put together in response to, is Zena here? I didn't see her. In response to some sort of lack of definition to the business that she's in. So I would make a motion to open the public hearing. Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Okay, we're now in public hearing. Zena, you want to come up? No, he'll be right back.
I think everyone's exhausted, so.
Exactly.
He's off.
Do you want to walk us through your rationale if you don't mind?
Sure.
Yeah.
So in the fall, I wrote a letter to the town council and the town manager requesting that we go over the current ordinances because it was really a gray area in terms of what I'm doing. I have a guided bike tour. I have 6 e-bikes and I have 6 gravel bikes, and I have, my customers wear an earpiece and I tell them history about the island and I stay in front of them and I tell them about the safety rules and whatnot. But there is an existing ordinance about renting e-bikes, and there was a question about whether what I was doing was actually categorized under renting bikes. And in fact, my guests book the tour. What comes with the tour is me, their guide, helmets, water bottles, snacks, history, and the bike that they ride. And so I just wanted to make it perfectly, like, I didn't want it to be a gray area anymore, which is why I came to you all.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zena.
Sure.
I actually think Karen did a great job drafting this. The one question and concern that I've had throughout this whole thing is, and Karen, if you don't mind unmuting, the real concern that I've had is that by doing an ordinance, we're somehow opening a door to rental electric bikes, which are not permitted now. And can you just offer us some comfort there, Karen?
Absolutely. So if you look at page 2, I believe it's item F. It states that the rental of motorized bicycles and other electronic motorized vehicles is still not permitted. So it draws the distinction, I think, that you're talking about.
Thank you. Any questions for Zena?
I don't have questions for Zena, but I do.
Good. Don't want to ask?
Yeah. This is Martha. Under definitions, tour businesses, a business enterprise or establishment that engages in, offers, provides, or conducts public or private guided tours either for walking. Well, I'm going to end it right there.
What about nonprofits? The Historical Society currently, I would suppose would be pre-existing non-conforming, but that gets a little sticky. Does, walking tours downtown, and we do guided tours of the cemetery, and, I'm sure there are others I'm not thinking of.
Are those paid, Martha? And is there a differentiation between something that's paid and
They're,
not?
they're paid.
They are paid, okay.
So if the question is whether or not that type of tour would be included, I would generally say yes. But if there's a concern at all about that, you could certainly amend the definition to be broader.
Or narrower.
Correct.
Do you want to?
Yeah, this just seems very, very much specifically to, the bicycles. I just don't want to find us partway through the season and somebody saying, oh my, I guess I shouldn't even be asking this. I'm on the board of the historical.
I don't, you know.
But I wouldn't be asking if I wouldn't know, I wouldn't know to ask it if I wasn't on the board of the historical. There are probably other groups out here that do the same sort of thing.
Like those.
Yeah.
Like, that's ghost tours. That's very much a commercial operation. And that's fundamentally a walking tour, is it not?
Taxi and walk.
So we have, and then there's also taxi tours, right? But that is different.
I think that's under a different ordinance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just back. Just in back.
Hi, Jess.
Hey.
Hi, Jess Willie, sorry.
Hi, Jess Willie. I think this is great, first of all. But there are also helicopter tours. There are kayak tours. There are lots of walking tours, some for profit, some not profit. There are mainland people that come out here with bike tours. They bring people, there's people who come out here for art tours. They bring people out and they do art tours, and then they do yoga. There's all sorts of tours. But I mean, what's in here, I think is great. You can't have more than 25 people. You can't have amplifying devices. So you're not, all those things are all, they all fit what everything's happening right now. It's not, I don't think it's narrowing too much. Wouldn't stop anybody from having a tour. Right?
Yeah.
But there are people that also come from the mainland, so they would have to be, this would apply to them too. So they would have to
Sure.
know.
But they would have to get a certificate. I mean, they're permitted use, but as I'm reading this. But would they have to get a certificate from the zoning office?
This ordinance would be specific to businesses operating on New Shoreham, out of New Shoreham. If you had somebody coming in from out of town, I mean, they'd have to comply with all of your ordinances. I guess the question in my mind is, it's something I might have to give a little thought to be honest, is whether or not someone coming from the mainland and operating a tour here. I'd want to think about that and make sure that there was some language in here that was clear. So that if that does happen or when that does happen, you would have some enforcement power.
I only know of 2 right now, but I can give you there.
Right, so now, have you ever done, I've never done a ghost tour, but so like the guideline here that says tour hours are limited from sunrise to sunset. So that might be a tour that goes after sunset.
But that's specific to bicycle.
And so,
Oh, this one is specific to.
No.
not
G, if you're reading G where it says
Yeah.
sunrise to sunset, that's saying that utilize bicycles. It's not disqualifying ghost tour. Is the way I would read it.
Yeah, just look at,
Okay.
you see at big G
Mhm.
in
Oh,
the,
you're right,
in
you're
the
right, sorry.
additional standards. That's just for bike tours.
Sorry, I didn't do that.
Martha, do you have any thought about the tour business definition since you asked about that?
No, that was what I was, that was my broad question.
So they're gonna have to come and say, we're doing a tour.
Yeah. And if there needs to be, I mean, I think this ordinance is fine as is, and if there needs to be anything else, we can amend it to
Yeah.
add it.
It's kind of,
I'd like to get it done.
that's my feeling about it.
Yeah, I like it too. The only thing, Karen, should we say, in the tour business, so it's under bicycle that the bicycle, the reason I'm going there is if someone creates an app and is trying to get around something, should the tour business definition say in-person guided tours? In G, it stipulates the bicycle leader would be there, but make it up, there's new headphones and people do guided tours from their home, but they're on bike, you know.
I think I'm totally with you there, Neil.
Let's say.
And for bicycles, it's already clarified that you have to be there, but for the others, do we just need to?
So I did send the ordinance to the Respect Block Island group because they did so much legwork on traffic. And so I'll just read you the feedback that I had from them. They felt like 6 seems like a big group for our roads unless they go single file, mandate helmets if you can. These 2 clauses seem to contradict one another, and they singled out they were comparing the first definition, tour business, and then F. Technically, you don't want to rent an e-bike in order to do a tour, maybe make the language clearer. So
That's not what it does, though. They're just, the point that Zena made is that you are paying for a tour. You are hiring Zena's company to do a tour. Whether you choose as part of that tour to ride a gravel bike or an e-bike is immaterial to the transaction.
I'm just reading the feedback. I can't defend it.
Yeah, all right.
Molly, just, could you read it again? What the concern was?
I think a lot of it is addressed, but I'm just reading it because I asked for it. So 6 seems like a big group for our roads unless they go single file, mandate helmets if you can. And then they felt that those two definitions might conflict with one another.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, come up. Sorry, Zena.
In this case, helmets are required and they're also required to
Go single file. And I'm talking to them the entire time. So if somebody isn't in single file, I ask them to get back in single file because I agree with that. It's not conducive to the traffic on the roads to have people riding side by side.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
I mean, I did ask them because they had done so many studies about roads, but it seemed like you were already doing a lot.
So in G, should we add, if you're already comfortable, should we just add mandatory helmets? Yeah.
Will you just make that motion, Neil, please?
Can I make a motion to add required helmets for bike tours in the ordinance for tour businesses, section G?
Second. All those in favor indicate by saying
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no.
And did I need to make a motion for adding in-person guided tours to the definition?
Yes, wherever Karen thinks that makes sense to do it.
Karen, you didn't comment on that?
I don't have an issue with the way it was proposed. I think that's fine.
The in-person piece?
In person and in the definition of tour business.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll make a motion to add to the tour business definition 202 to read in-person guided tours.
Second. Any discussion? Not all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Millie, do I have to adjourn the public hearing before we act? Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved.
Does anybody have any?
Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Jamie. What are you gonna add?
Don't ruin it now, Jamie. Jamie.
Jamie Johnston, Beacon Hill. Just under tour business and allowed zoning. I don't see anywhere where it's allowed on zoning yet. Is that something that's being addressed tonight? So if you look at zoning appendix B, use categories allowed by zoning district. If you go along the line of tour business, there are no X's, S's, or P's or LDPs.
Karen, you're the master of the zoning table. Can you answer that question, please?
That is something that the council needs to decide what zones it wants to allow this use in. And then we would need to mark up the table accordingly. I
So
would
that-
recommend if that's something you want to take up now, I would recommend that you look at just for some guidance, the use either retail trade if you want to allow it in more areas. If you want to be more restrictive, maybe look at hotel or inn. And the reason why is and this is just my opinion, this is not a legal issue, just because those uses would seem to me to be conducive to this type of use. In fact, they would work hand in hand. So they are similar in that regard.
Would you, for some reason you broke up there a little bit, Karen, at least for me. Maybe it was my brain, but did you say put it in OHC?
No, what I said was if you're looking for guidance as to where to allow it,
Yes, we are.
look at, I would recommend looking at either the retail trade use or hotel inn, with the understanding that hotel inn, those uses seem to be a little bit more restricted, and retail trade, actually I have that backwards. Retail trade would be more restrictive, hotel inn would be more broad.
Okay, so just asking a quick question procedurally. As part of this motion, would we be adding that tour businesses would be permitted for purposes of the zoning districts in whatever retail trade? Is that how this motion would go?
That's up to you. I mean, if you want to, if you agree with that, then yes, you could do that. If you wanted to take it, zone by zone, you could do that. But I also want to be clear as well. This is this would be a amendment to your zoning ordinance. So you do want your planning board to review and provide their advice. By statute 452451, planning does have the opportunity to.
So this part of it is not properly before us, or I'm struggling with this a little bit.
It's all before you. It's just that I would advise you not to vote to approve it. I think what you need to do is get it in a state that you like, and then vote to refer it to your planning board. They will take 45 days or maximum of 45 days and then report back to you. It's at that point that the council would approve or deny.
Can I just ask a question
sure.
about the, because different tours do different things, right? So it doesn't, I understand your impulse to say that it should be in the same areas as retail trade, but it kind of reason, like, I would think that where a bike tour would want to go isn't downtown.
I think there's two questions.
That's,
Where does it operate from and where is it allowed to
yeah.
go?
Is that
This
what
is
you're
about the
saying?
location of the actual
So this is
business
where the
itself.
operation where it would
Yes,
start,
yes,
not where it could operate.
right.
Is
I
that
mean, because
right?
then you get into saying, well, the kayaks can't go into the closed waters for shellfishing, or you can't have a ghost tour
Yeah.
on High Street, beyond HTC, or, you know, you're getting into.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm asking. So so Karen, you're saying this is where it would originate from, not where it could operate.
Correct. The ordinance governed where the business is located. The tour itself could be anywhere on the island.
Okay. Thank you.
So, for what it's worth, I came here tonight expecting that we were able to do this ordinance.
We could make the decision and send it to.
Yes, yes, and then. So just procedurally, we vote for this. We vote what? We vote to endorse it and send it to planning?
Yes, you would refer it to the planning board.
Then planning acts. And then it comes back to us again?
For passage, correct. And the reason why is because the state statute doesn't really contemplate a scenario where the council is putting forth a zoning ordinance amendment. The language of the state law is geared towards members of the community or the planning board itself.
Why are we, and I may have asked this question before, Karen, when we were working on this language, but why would we not do it as a business license?
So I'm sure Nick can chime in on this, but licensing, in order to license a business, you do have to have state law authority, meaning the legislature has to give you that authority to do that.
I agree with Karen.
State is all we need to do.
Yeah. We've done so well. All right, then I would make a motion to endorse this and send it to the planning. Is endorse the right word?
Did you want recommendations on the zone?
Use retail trade as our guideline, or?
Endorse, as amended. Sorry, Molly.
We don't have, why don't we just say all the business zones and the mixed use? Does that cover everything? I'm not that familiar with zoning anymore.
Do we make a motion, what we suggest, I'm sorry, everybody, but we got to get this right. Do we make a motion that we suggest that it be in Hotel Inn, for example?
You can do it a couple different ways. You could decide that. And then those, the zones in which it would be allowed would be those same zones, and that would be an amendment to this draft. So a full draft would go to planning, or you could send it without that line item as to where it's allowed and where it's not, and you could have planning offer their advice. You could do it either way.
So could I ask, having never been on the zoning board, what is zone PU and what is zone M?
So I knew I was gonna get this question. I didn't think I'd have this up, hold on. So I think, well, zone M is mixed use, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
And PU, I think, is public utilities.
Oh, okay. So it's not that. All right. Makes sense.
So,
So are we sending a recommendation of where we think it should be allowed?
yeah.
So
Okay.
then, what if we were to say mixed use, Old Harbor commercial, New Harbor commercial, and what is SC?
Service commercial,
Service commercial.
is that everything?
Does that cause a problem?
No, no, the council has full authority to decide where things are allowed, meaning which zone and not. That's within your purview.
We just don't have a zoning map in front of us. That's the problem.
Then I would suggest that we have the option of not making a recommendation, asking the planning board for a recommendation, and then if we need to, we can fix that when it comes back to us.
Okay.
Why don't we just say all, so ask them that our considerations, all zones where commercial businesses are currently allowed.
Yeah. Sure. Yes. You hear that, Karen?
Got it.
Okay. Can I have a motion to move this to planning? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Oh, sorry, Jamie.
I just want to be, RV was considered as well.
Okay. Thank you. You hear that, Karen?
I did not hear that, no.
He said we want to make sure that RB is considered as well.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be a delay. Sorry about that. Item number 5, hold public hearing, discuss and act on application of Judith Rose and Rose Farm Inn to amend the zoning map to change a portion of Plat 8, Lot 262 from RB zone to RCM zone. Can I have a motion to open a public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. We're in public hearing. All right, someone.
Good
Joe?
evening. I'm representing, good
I
evening.
thought you were here. I didn't know you were
I was enjoying the show. I represent Judith Rose, the Rose Farm Inn. Judith is not here tonight, but her daughter Jamie is. We are involved in a subdivision of the Rose Farm, which is a 15-acre parcel of land approximately behind the Atlantic Inn and next to the Spring House. On the property are 2 buildings, the Captain Rose House and the Rose Farm Inn, which comprise the Rose Farm Inn, and they are on approximately an acre of land. Behind them, there's Judith's house, but right behind them on a roughly on the largest piece of land on the property is a commercial building which houses the bicycle shop, an apartment, offices for Bill Rose's business, and also some mechanics for the accessory well for the Rose Farm Inn. That property also includes the parking for the Rose Farm Inn and the septic system for the Rose Farm Inn. What we're proposing is to move the New Harbor commercial, the Rose Farm Inn itself is located in the New Harbor commercial zone.
Excuse me?
The Rose Farm Inn itself is located in the New Harbor commercial. No,
Old Harbor.
no, excuse me. It's in the RCM zone, residential steam mixed use. Pardon me. We're proposing that and the remainder of the property is in the residential B zone. We're proposing a lot line change that puts all the commercial buildings on a single lot. And we've received planning board master plan approval for that. We're asking you to now conditionally amend the zoning map so that parcel will be zoned in the entirety of RCM, so that all the commercial uses on the property will be RCM. The remainder of the property will remain our residential B. I've got a picture that might help.
Tell us what that means.
What that means is, if you look at the map,
Why can't you just tell us what it means on this?
the RB zone moves from this line to this line. This becomes a single lot, and it's a conditional zone change, which only takes place if the planning board ultimately approves the subdivision.
And this all stays
Everything else stayed RB,
Everything to the south.
everything to the south. Yeah, you've got about, maybe an acre and a half on the north where the commercial building is that would be joined with the inn into a single lot.
So you're really trying to make this all reflecting what's been there for a very long time.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
You do have a favorable recommendation from the planning
Yes,
board,
so-
who's out in your file.
The ultimate purpose, I mean, what's the outcome for you guys?
The outcome is for Judith to pass the property along to the family in a way that's more useful. And similarly to coordinate, consolidate all of the land that actually serves the Rose Farm into a single lot.
You will also be making it not as non-conforming.
In fact, if by increasing the size, it will be large enough to conform to the zoning ordinance for hotels, which it doesn't currently.
So this large lot to the south would be a third lot?
That stays, yeah, but that's gonna be a single lot in the RB zone.
And is that subdividable or is that just, it doesn't, how big is that?
It's, I think it's about 6.2 acres, and we're not proposing subdividing it now, and it actually has a significant stream across it that would be a river, and it has the public well that serves the Rose Farm Inn. So for several reasons, it's not currently subdividable. I'm not saying 30 years from now it won't be, but it's not now.
But just so that I'm clear, and not that there's anything wrong with it. This would make it eligible for a larger use as a hotel? I thought that was what you just said.
I would say it would bring it into conformity. It already is a hotel.
No, I know, but
It would all, you know, whether you could increase the size of it. We've not even looked at that.
Okay.
Hotels require 80,000 square feet, and there are a lot of complications with hotels.
Sure.
So this will at least make it an 80,000 square foot.
I just
don't-
thought that I heard that when you were in answer to Neil's question. It's very
I
helpful.
think what Joe said was it would make the lot with the hotel the size it's supposed to be by making it larger.
Right, it will currently, it would now be a lot.
Would now be conforming.
It would now be a conforming lot, conforming hotel use on the lot as
That's-
opposed to a non-conforming. use.
That's, I didn't hear the entire sentence. Thank you,
And
Joe.
I may not have said it.
Yeah, no.
I've been listening to him longer than you.
Yeah. Well, believe me, I have flashbacks tonight.
So just so I can clarify what I'm looking at, the lot, yeah, so lot 8, 262 is the bike shop? Currently the bike shop?
The bike shop is the building that's shown behind, just south of the two hotel buildings.
So on
It says,
8, 262.
let me take a look at my map. Hold on. I get confused with patent lot listings. Yes, 262, as it currently configured, contains the bike shop building.
So lot 8, 260, that's the main building and the hotel building.
Right, that's the Rose Farm Inn and the Captain Rose houses too.
Okay.
And what we're doing is trying to enlarge that so that all those three buildings would be on a single lot, which would now be called Lot 260. And then 262 will be a reduced size, but still large lot on which no development is currently proposed, nor is it possible due to the existence of the public well on the property.
Any other questions?
I think I understand.
The key fact for me is that planning voted 6-0 in favor of this, and it's much more their area of expertise than it is mine. Can I have a motion to, so you said, you used the word conditionally.
We're asking that you approve, yes, consistent, we don't want the zone change to go into effect unless the subdivision is approved. So we're asking that you make the zone change condition on the approval of the subdivision plan.
Can someone make that motion, please? Oh, sure. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're out. Can I have a motion to conditionally approve, pending, zoning's decision on the subdivision question, right? Planning or zoning?
Okay. Yeah, we have two more phases in the subdivision process after we're here. We have a preliminary submission and then a final approval. So we're asking that the zone change goes into effect upon the final approval of the subdivision.
Okay. Can I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Do we want to note for the motion, the favorable opinion from the planning board and,
He's going back to the plan.
right, but I still think we should put it on our record. But we didn't just do it.
We have no objection to that, obviously.
And that,
So we've already voted.
I'm asking if we can add to the, we already voted?
We've already voted.
I thought we just was in
No.
motion form. Okay.
All right, Joe, we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Discuss an act to set public hearing date for, New Shoreham General Ordinance, Chapter 8, Licenses and Business Regulation, Article 2, Amusements, Sections 8-16, Definitions, and 8-17, License Required. This is the clarification of the ordinance regarding amusements and rides that we did not do prior to the conclusion of the court case for obvious reasons. What's the date?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I'm asking Millie. Can I have a motion?
Could I just jump in for a second?
Yes.
Karen was looking into a few issues on this. My suggestion would be to continue it because I expect there'll be some input from zoning on it.
Okay. So we don't have to do anything?
That's
All
my
right.
suggestion. I would let the item pass.
Very well. We will not be acting on that tonight. We're waiting, apparently.
And we have an open hearing.
Discuss an act on a letter of intent in support of a resilient food systems infrastructure and equipment grant. Included in your packet is a memo from the collective. Visual, which had been requested at our work session last week. A letter from Jess Ronosky. And non-binding letter of agreement. And then a draft, which I had agreed to do, which is at the bottom if you're on clerk base. Just sort of for public consumption. It says, dear Miss, I couldn't remember Maggie's whole thing. When I last wrote on behalf of the New Shoreham Town Council, I indicated there were several potential sites for a commercial aquaculture dock that were under consideration by the town, the Block Island Land Trust, and the aquaculture cooperative. It should that be collective? Or is it cooperative? Collective. Okay, we'll change that. Over the last few months, many of those sites have been considered, and I write to inform you that the cooperative and a private landowner have approached the town with a potential dock location. The site presented, Plat 5, Lot 218, is adjacent to the town's existing boat ramp in an area of New Harbor that has significant commercial activity. While there are many issues to settle, including engineering, state and local permitting, and other details, Town Council asked me to write to express support for moving ahead with this site, again, pending due diligence. Thank you very much. that satisfactory from your perspectives? I mean, I don't want to talk about it as a council.
Right.
Yeah. No? Did I do something wrong? So is there, do you think we should change the draft? I'm asking. What's that?
So thank you very much. I think that that's great for, especially for the time constraint that we're under for this
For the grant.
specific grant proposal. I would just like to once again reiterate that we're hoping that with the support, if we get the grant, if we can put certain things into place, that we can continue the discussion with the town about elements of ownership, insurance, use.
So thank you, Jess. That was actually why I said pending due diligence, because there's going to be a lot that we have to do to get there, and it's a lot, and that doesn't mean that it's, you know, not doable. I just want, frankly, you know, our responsibility from the town is to be, you know, to say, frankly, we got to do a lot of due diligence, but this is an interesting, you know, this is an idea we support. I don't know how people think about that. People okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, like I was explaining in an earlier hearing, because of open meetings laws, we can't all converse on this. So really like the first I was hearing of this was at our last meeting, and I felt very like fish out of water. I had no idea what anybody was really discussing. There wasn't anything in my packet. So now there is. I'm not uncomfortable with it because we're not actually committing to this, right? Like without more discussion.
There's
Right.
going to be a lot of work to do, but in order to have the work to do,
Then we have to do this
you know
work.
what I mean?
Right,
So
but I
there's
guess
a
what
bit
I'm
of that.
saying is that like on meeting number 2, we're not like, yes, we're totally
Well,
doing this in this
there-
location at this,
Yeah,
you know.
there are a number of things we're gonna have to figure out. And as Jess says, from things like ownership, leasing, what would that look like? And by the way, I already got, I'm sure you guys have too. How do we make sure that this isn't gonna be a commercial dock that large boats come in? You know, like, there's all of those things that are reasonable and legitimate to solve that I don't think even come close to being unsolvable, but we're gonna have a punch list that we have to get through. And the punch list has, you know, some big punches like CRMC and, you know, and I think Jess made the point well at our last work session around how valuable it is to have the local government along with the applicant, which I understand and agree with. But this is a first step for purposes of the grant to say, look, we got to do a lot of due diligence, but we have a pretty exciting thing that got presented to us and we're prepared to pursue it. Is that good? Do we need a motion? Can you make a motion just to let me send this or include it? So we make a motion, please.
Make a motion to send a letter of intent showing support for the resilient food system infrastructure and equipment grant on Block Island aquaculture plant.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Right?
Aye.
Perfect. Tom Reeson, I've missed you so. Or you called Mixmaster Reeson after last night. But, you look like.
Thank you. Tom Reeson, facility manager. We are here to discuss 2 bids that I've been a part of. The first is the Coast Guard Station dock. This is an item that was budgeted last year. And we bid it out, and the only bid we got back was way over what we could afford. And the budget was amended, and we put it out again to bid, and the bidder that we received from came in under the value that we had budgeted, so that's a good thing. But because it's construction and over $10,000, we have to consider it a bid, and you have to approve all bids. There is an underlying question on this, the bidder, that we would like to resolve before we can move forward. And that is whether he is permitted to work in Rhode Island. He's a New London firm. And I've talked to Chuck Phelps, our building official, a couple hours ago, and he didn't believe that this was regulated work, that dock building and this waterborne activities are not regulated the way that a carpenter or a plumber or electrician would be. But he was already home for the night, so he wanted to confirm this in his research in the morning.
So would you like us to approve this with the condition that those things be
Yes,
satisfied?
I would. Thank you.
Approved subject to, if needed,
Yes.
the contract is licensed to practice, so licensed to work in Rhode Island.
When would this work start?
ASAP.
ASAP? So there's time sensitivity here.
I was asked this around 5 o'clock, and the contractor has the paperwork. He just needs to be able to provide that for me. He wasn't in his office to send it to me. Again, if you can just approve it as pending approval of the paperwork that he can show.
Reciprocity, to get reciprocity from Connecticut to Rhode Island, it's not that difficult. It happens all the time, so I'm not too concerned.
Work will happen immediately. It'll be about a week's worth of work to get done before the season.
Right, you need it done before the season. Any questions from the council?
No, but I did raise a concern around, or not really a concern, just better understand that we only get often one bid. What are we doing? Marion did a very nice job walking me through the process. So bids are advertised in the local newspaper, Black Island Times, and the Providence Journal. Bids are then put on BidNet via RI Purchase Group. BidNet's a platform for government bidding. And then the State Division of Purchasing has a master price agreement the town can piggyback on. So we're doing more than we need to make sure we're getting the process. So just FYI.
So can I have a motion to approve this this expenditure subject to the fulfillment of the conditions that were outlined by the facility manager and town manager
How much is it?
and harbor master?
90,000.
In budget.
And it's already in the budget.
Good to go.
Can't hear you.
To whom?
Boat Works, yeah, Harbor Works. Harbor Works. It's a company that pulled the,
No, you said, well, the name for the record.
yes, Harbor Works. It's the company that we used to pull that abandoned vessel off the West Beach last year.
So it took them long. That was a joke.
Yeah.
That was a joke. So Neil made the motion. Can I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Okay. Item 2.
Yes.
Is the transfer station has been using only the big doors on the west side and now needs to use the garage door on the south end, which as you drive in, that door has been out of commission for a decade or more, as long as any one of us can remember, and it's rusted in place and unrepairable. The budget to replace that is available within my maintenance line, and I just need to get your approval because it's over $10,000.
Okay.
Now, we're using an MPA, Neil, as you mentioned, the overhead door company that services all of the town's garage doors.
And this is important to the implementation of the composting.
It needs replacing anyway, but that's why it's suddenly
Yes.
got
Right.
urgency. Yes.
Any discussion or questions from the council? Can I have a motion to approve this expenditure?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, discuss and act on addition and update to the fee schedule. Land use application, unified development review application, $.
So.
Just have at it.
So, this was kind of hanging around from the last
Yes,
meeting.
yes.
I spoke with Jen again on this, and she really would like to keep this as a to be determined for her to determine on a case by case basis, because the way that these applications come in is some of them require a series of different boards, or they travel through different paths, which then she says creates a different level of commitment through the office.
Does she currently set it? No, this is the new unified development.
This is
review.
exactly.
I'll tell you what, I get where Jen's coming
Yep.
from, but I would like some proposed ordinance language that describes how this is going to work. That's.
Yeah, maybe if it's going to
It's not-
2 committees, it's X dollars. If it goes to 3
Right.
committees, it's,
Yeah.
It's a tiered process.
So, thank you, Mary Ann. B, application to amend the zoning ordinance, $500.
And that's my suggestion. That's an application that comes through our office, and then
Gotcha.
it takes an awful lot of time in the office, also staff and professional time with a planner and attorneys.
Thoughts or comments on that?
what's it currently?
$100.
So this would be like the ordinance that we looked at for.
For Joe Priestley, the one that we just approved.
Okay.
That one came in through through an application to amend the zoning map. The Chris Warfel has put a couple of them in
Yes.
front of you. In both of those cases, the solar and the affordable housing, for lack of a better word, he has asked for waiver of the cost and fees associated with that, and you did grant that. So that is something that you have the flexibility of doing.
Do you think $500 is rational?
I do. I know it's a large.
It's
leap,
your
but
job,
I-
Millie, you tell us, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I'm.
You think $500? Can I have a motion to set the fee for the application to the zoning ordinance, moved by Molly, second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Short-term rental license, I assume we won't take up until after we adopt that ordinance at our next date certain. Appointment of Sewer District Commission and Water District Commission term expiring 4/30/2029. For some reason, I'm not highlighted on clerk base here. Who is that?
That is Diane Haight is
Diane
willing
Haight.
to do another term.
Very well. Can I have a motion to Diane Haid?
Diane Haid.
Diane Haid. I'm sorry, I'm teasing. Can I have a motion to appoint Diane Haid to the Sewer District Commission and Water District Commission for a term expiring 4/30/2029? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Vacancies on Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire, Sewer District, 2 alternate positions, Water District, 2 alternate positions, Sam P. Meadow, Property Management Committee, 2 positions? Oh, that comes from the Land Trust, right? Or do we, what are we doing there? the heck
Sam
are
P.
we
Meadow,
doing?
that's 2 council members is what it has been in the past.
Oh, it is. I would make a motion to appoint, can I? Can I, Millie?
I don't have it on there for action. I'm sorry.
I know, I'm making a motion to appoint you guys.
I think you have to, and now, don't you have to?
We have the
post
30-day announcement. I mean,
All
granted, this is
right,
a town
all right,
council
all right,
appointment, but-
all right.
Every time this comes up, I say, we can get rid of that, you guys just keep going ahead.
Can I just say one quick thing at the end of this when no one's here? I should make this announcement at the beginning when you have 50 people in the audience. sewer district commission, water district commission. When you're talking about the future of our town, those are critical infrastructure components. They're so important, and we have one relatively new shining star there who's on her phone. I could have said anything about you. But please, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye. We're adjourned.